Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I paint this simple flower with acrylic paints. You'll notice my palette has some paint in it. That is because I've already recorded this once. Well, I thought I recorded it, but I didn't press record, so there we go. I'm doing it again. So, as you can see, I'm putting my paint out again in my palette. I've got green, red, yellow, white and purple. I'll list the colours out in the description of the video for you to reference if you want to use the same colours as me, although absolutely don't need to do that. So starting off with mixing a kind of orangey colour, using a bit of the yellow and a bit of the red, and we paint a kind of oval shape to start with. So this is going to be the centre of the flower, so it doesn't really matter too much what shape you end up with because you're going to paint quite a lot around it. So a kind of oval shape on its side slightly, because we're going to sort of paint the flower from the side as you saw at the beginning of the video. Now getting another brush and starting to paint in that stem. So I'm just using the green straight from the tube at this point, so you can really just work with the colours that you've got. So, you know, if you had ready-made orange for the centre, you could have always used that as well. I don't, so I just decided to use the red and yellow. So the green I'm using ready-made, and I've added a touch of yellow just at the top there. So once you're happy with the stem of the flower, it's time to start painting the petals. So my flower is going to be purple. So I'm starting with a dark purple. So it's basically the dark Cezine purple straight from the tube, and I'm adding a touch of the cadmium red, but you can use obviously whatever colour you like. This colour is going to be the background of the petals, so you won't actually see that much of it in the end, but this is where we're starting off with this dark colour. You can see then what I'm doing is I've got a square brush, I'm loading up the brush with paint, and I'm pushing the side of the brush down and then sort of flicking. So one side of the stem I've curved slightly to the left, and then when I come underneath the stem I'm curving slightly to the right just to show the shape of the flower. So continue adding the petals in the darker colour in this way, not worrying too much about where they're placed on the page, just putting them around the outside of that orange oval that you've already painted, and don't worry too much if they go over the stem. At this point we're going to go back to the centre of the flower, just because we want to let the petals at least partially dry before we go back in with any more colour. I'm coming back into the centre of the flower now with a bit more red into that orange, and now I'm actually just tapping the brush onto the page just to kind of create a bit of texture, adding a bit more yellow in places, not worrying too much about whether it's actually mixed in. We want it to create a kind of uneven effect because that's more realistic, or certainly as realistic as this painting is going to get, to be honest. So yeah, once you've added a bit more to the centre, we're going to come back to the petals. I've added a bit of white to my purple that I already had mixed up, and I'm now going back over the petals with the same technique, the sort of the push and flick. You can see I'm mostly going over the petals that I'd already painted in, but it really doesn't matter if you don't quite get it spot on, one on top of the other. It really doesn't matter. This isn't a super realistic painting. I'm thinking of, I think, a kind of daisy maybe. I'm not great with flower names, but it reminds me of one of those daisies which have got lots of layers of petals. So we're kind of going in with that and not worrying too much about super realistic paintings here. So you can see that I've added a couple of extra petals sort of on either side, and I'm just coming back in and lengthening some of the original petals just because I wanted them to be a bit bigger and fill in more of that space. And I'm happier with that, how this is starting to look now. It felt a bit sparse before, so I'm sort of lengthening out some of the existing petals and creating a few extra ones. Again, not thinking too hard about where I'm putting the brush, but trying not to keep going over the same areas and mixing all the streaky colour in and blending it out too much. So now I'm going back to the brush that I was using for the orange paint, grabbed a little bit of just pure white at this point, and I'm tapping it into the centre of the flower to create a highlight. It looks a lot at this point, but kind of have to trust the process and don't worry, it'll work itself out. If for some reason you find that actually, because I don't know if you can tell, but the centre of my flower is still wet, so the white paint is starting to blend in, plus there's a little bit of orange left on my brush anyway, so that helps the white paint blend in and not look quite so harsh. Now adding a little bit of yellow into the green that I used for the stem, and going back in and adding just a bit more green, slightly different shade of green this time, onto the stem just to brighten it up a little. And then going back into the centre of the flower, it did look like it needed a bit more blending out to me. So I just continued picking up a little bit of white and taking it a little bit further across the centre of the flower, tapping it into the wet paint just to create that slightly brighter area. And that's it. That's how you paint a simple flower with acrylics. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!